March is in full swing, the birds are chirping again, the weather's getting nicer, the sun's staying up later, and one of the best years of hockey we've had in a long time is entering what will be a thrilling final stretch of the regular season. And we're back once again to talk all about it. So with that, welcome into Top Shelf presented by Skyscanner. Levi Smith hosting again. Aiden will be back soon. Per sources. We have sources that say...
Sources? How many you got?
I got one source, but it's him. So that's fine. But yeah, joined as always by Matisz, Cushman. Guys, we're talking hockey again. Just kind of starting to see how everything's shaping up post-trade deadline. I know we talked about that a lot last week, but you kind of get this area in between the deadline and the end of the season where teams just really start to take form. And I think it's setting up for a very exciting final stretch here. We actually have some like wild card battles, which is nice to see for the first time in a while. Certain teams aren't doing so great down this stretch, Toronto Maple Leafs. But yeah, how do we feel about gearing up for the last stretch? You think every wild card spot is still up for grabs here?
Oh yeah. I mean, I guess out in the West, Minnesota has that first wild card pretty secure, but otherwise, and a lot of teams are playing, like the Ottawa Senators are playing fantastic hockey right now, and it's good to see because there was a point in the season where it's like, okay, we're hoping for Ottawa, Buffalo, and Detroit to make some noise this season, so we see some, movement in the Atlantic because we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. Well, Detroit and Ottawa have done their part, and Buffalo not so much. But it's come. The second half surge from both teams has been really exciting.
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, we could start though, kind of digging into a bit more trade deadline talk, just in terms of who we think has fit in the best so far, because there's a flurry of deals. Like we said before, like the rich really got richer, but it's all about kind of who can fit in the best, and you don't want to mess with the chemistry that's there already that made the team so good. So I'll start with you, John, and just asking you, which player and which team do you think has been the best fit thus far?
I think even though the stats aren't there yet, he's got 2 points in 5 games. I'm still going to pick Brock Nelson. I think the fit stylistically is tremendous in Colorado, that up-tempo style that Jared Bednar promotes. And him fitting into that 2C spot is just perfect when you've got Charlie Coyle, this sort of physical specimen who's going to win a bunch of draws in the 3C. You've got Nathan McKinnon, one of the best players in the world, in the top spot. And then Brock Nelson as a defensively conscious, rush player in that second spot. He's got Nichushkin on one side, Drouin on the other. And they're starting to cook a little bit. Like I said, Nelson, 2 points, 5 games, but that line has put up 4 goals so far in 5 games. I mean, what else could you ask for? And the chemistry's building. And I just think that it's almost like Nelson got really hyped towards the deadline because he was the top rental center. But I feel like he's still kind of underrated because he has a bit of an understated game, but he does everything right, very few weaknesses. And I just think that the way that Colorado identifies players, they're very specific, they target very specific guys. And I feel like within that lineup, he fits just seamlessly. And don't get me wrong, he'd probably look good on, 25 teams in the league. But in terms of deadline moves, that one I'm giving full marks, 2 thumbs up.
I think I do agree. Like, obviously he would look good elsewhere, but I think the fact that he went to kind of a pre-existing powerhouse already, like it almost makes that fit look even better because he doesn't have to go there and you're not expecting him to be their top scorer all of a sudden. Like if he went over to, there's a lot of talk about him going to Minnesota, and obviously I think they would benefit from him a lot, but I think there'd be a bit more pressure and he wouldn't just seamlessly be able to slip in there as well as he has in Colorado. You agree, Kyle, or is there somebody else that you would say has been better?
Yeah, I really like the Brock Nelson fit. How about Mark Jankowski with 4 goals on 4 shots? That's a fun one. Of course, that's not going to last as
problems.
much. Exactly. There's a couple other. Obviously, Mikko Rantanen is going to be a great fit and has already looked good in Dallas. But the one that I think has the most impact as well, Dylan Cousins in Ottawa,
Good
where just looks rejuvenated, looks like he's excited to be at the rink and playing games again. And I really like his fit as the second-line center there in Ottawa behind Stützle. I just think he brings a different dimension than Josh Norris did, brings a bit more at 5-on-5 versus what Norris did. Has been productive to start there, and obviously with the Senators rolling, it's been a good fit early on where if you're on a team that has been struggling like he was in the Sabres and you're having a down season, that's something that can snowball pretty quickly. And to have that midseason change, get right back into a playoff race, everything like that, it's great to see Dylan Cousins kind of at his game again.
Yeah, I think if you're a player struggling on the Sabres or one of these other lowly teams, at the very least, you can always kind of have that fallback where it's like, okay, like if I get out of here, if I maybe play with some better players.
And it's something as well where it's like usually that reset happens in the offseason, and then you feel good going into that next season with that team. But to have that happen mid-season and you can go right into it, I'm sure is very exciting for somebody like Cousins.
And the Senators are in a similar spot to the Sabres in terms of like the ages of their core and stuff. So I can just imagine Dylan Cousins walks into the room for the first time, and it's just a breath of fresh air in regards to like, you know, shaking guys' hands, and they're like, we're in the thick of things with the playoff race. Like, it just sort of gives you that extra juice and that motivation. I mean, his first game he had like 8 hits or something. Like, he was just all over the place.
Which was not happening in Buffalo.
No, that's not. Yeah, this is the same player that when Rasmus Dahlin was getting ragdolled in front of him, he just stood there and stared. Like, okay. So there's certainly something going on there in terms of the change of scenery and just kind of fitting in seamlessly with this Ottawa group.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think those are both great picks. Shifting gears a little bit, because this is another interesting topic I think's worth talking about. You see it every year, not even just hockey, but all sports, where guys are on fire in their rookie year, and then they get to that second year and they slow down a bit, and it's always something that's very fun to monitor. So we'll go to you here with this one, Kyle. Just at this point of the year, who do you think's had the best sophomore season so far?
This was a fascinating one, because when you start diving into some of the results and some of the numbers, there's a couple different intriguing options. Ultimately, I went with Brock Faber here, where I put myself in the mindset of if I was voting on like the Calder Trophy and putting it in the exact same situation. And I think Faber is just the best sophomore right now in terms of the best player. Even if some other players maybe have some more intriguing or eye-popping results, the thing that stands out to me is Faber's playing over 25 minutes on a team that we just mentioned is probably going to make the playoffs. And the crazy stat to me is he led Team USA in ice time in that gold medal championship game at the Four Nations face-off, which is where when you're doing that in your second season in the NHL, that just kind of pushes you over the top. Even if he isn't producing like the crazy offensive numbers or dominating just absurd numbers at 5-on-5 or anything like that. He's been good, obviously, playing 25-plus minutes, playing a big role. But there's some other players that maybe have the sexier stats, like even his teammate Marco Rossi having the 20-goal, 50-point campaign, Logan Cooley leveling up, some other things like that. I do want to mention one other player that I seriously considered here, and that's Jackson Lacombe, who has stepped into a top pairing role with Anaheim, has completely leveled up his game. He's playing like 23 minutes a night recently, has over 30 points this season. If you look at some of the more advanced numbers, he leads Anaheim in expected goals for, playing those top minutes as well. Some of the micro stats as well. He's been dominant carrying the puck, creating chances, all of those things. If we started the season and said that there was an Anaheim defenseman that was going to level up, we probably thought it would be Pavel Mintyukov, a top 10 pick, or Olin Zellweger, one of the top prospects coming out of the WHL a couple years ago. But Lacombe is 24 years old. He stepped up into a legit top pairing defenseman this season. And in a couple years' time, we could be talking about him as like a legit Team USA type defender. So he's another guy that I really considered here.
Yeah, Lacombe seemed to really struggle as a rookie. So it's very, I don't know if bizarre is the right word, but like it's really impressive, his leap. Because a lot of the sophomores that we usually discuss, it's like, okay, strong rookie season, boom, he's moving up that trajectory. But it was like Lacombe was like almost like on the downslope in terms of what is this guy going to be? Is he going to end up on the third pair? You know, once it's all said and done?
It looked like he would be a third pair guy, and now he looks like a legit top pairing guy.
Let me throw another name at you, Dmitry Voronkov.
Yeah.
Love his power game. That's just a massive human. You know, really smart. And 5-on-5 when he's on the ice, Columbus. The numbers, this is rough, but I know he's plus 23, so I think it's like 47 goals for 24 against, something like that. That's fifth in the NHL in terms of that plus minus there. Number one, Marchenko, his line mate there. So, the Marchenko-Voronkov connection has been deadly this season, especially when you consider, Fantilli and Monahan have been down the middle with them. So, like, clearly that pair is really working, and I don't know. Voronkov is one of those guys who arrived on the scene last year and did impress. Not kind of the opposite of Lacombe, but I think that this season he's even solidified himself more as this top 6 producer.
Yeah. It's been good to see just across the board, seeing guys taking that step in the second year, because like we said, like when you're a rookie, you have all that juice and stuff, but that second year is really the telling year.
Sophomore slump.
Exactly, and I think with Faber going back to the top here. And I'm glad you mentioned the Four Nations, because if you were a casual hockey fan and tuned into that Four Nations and saw him on the back end for USA, you were probably thinking, who is this like wily vet? Like this guy's
right?
Yeah.
He's probably been doing this for a decade. Like he looks so calm with the puck, the way he's playing out there, he's matching up with the best. And yeah, to see that that's a guy in his second year in the NHL, very impressive stuff. I got one more thing to touch on as, again, we're getting set for this final stretch run. And we're headed over to the West, talking about the wild card teams in the West. And John, I just want to know, who do you think has the best shot at claiming that final wild card position? Because it's been it's a strange dogfight going on over there. You've got some teams that like we thought were really going to be locks, and now they're falling off a little bit, like the Canucks, the Flames. Like I don't know what to make the Flames still. I won't probably this entire season. But who's your pick to grab that final wild card spot?
I'm going to go with St. Louis, and a lot of it is based on strength of schedule. So Tankathon.com, they sort of figure out through their model how difficult schedules are. And guess who has the best schedule? I guess the weakest schedule right now in the entire league, it's St. Louis.
Louis.
Even though they've played one extra game than two of the teams on the list there that they're competing with, and then Calgary, they've actually played 2 fewer games than St. Louis. Like that's obviously a disadvantage to have, the other teams to have games in hand. But St. Louis is interesting. Where like coming out of the Four Nations break, I think they have the 3rd highest points percentage. Like they're on a run here. They didn't sell or buy the deadline. They kept Braden Shen, and they've just been kind of humming along here with their power play too, under Jim Montgomery. So when I look at the other teams in the race, like Vancouver's had such a weird season with injuries and drama and poor performances, and it just feels like, in terms of worthiness for getting that last wild card, they don't deserve it, so to speak. Calgary, it feels like they're running out of gas a little bit down the stretch here. Like fantastic story. They've been competitive, every night of the year, but the Blues like actually want this spot. The other two seem to be like and then Utah, I think they have a chance, but they're also 2 points back of St. Louis right now. So St. Louis has those 73 points. Having the points banked is important here. So they just have to overcome the fact that they played 68 games and a couple of the other teams have played 67, 66. But yeah, I don't feel great picking the Blues, but the strength of schedule thing is important when you get down to like 14, 15, 16 games.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree with the pick. I will say, do we think like with the way that this kind of the standings are shaking up here, and with how many more points like Minnesota has over any of these teams, are we getting ourselves into a bit of a Capitals of last year situation where whoever gets that second wild card spot might just get dog walked in the first round?
Yeah, potentially.
Probably.
The way that, like, just to stick on the Blues, the way that I've looked at the Blues all season is that their floor is basically, like, right around the wild card, maybe get in, maybe don't. And their ceiling is, like, maybe swept in the first round. Like, it's like the difference between the floor and the ceiling is nothing. Which, like, is good and bad. I mean, overall, that's not great because, the point is to win the cup. But I guess it's good if you want to have a couple of home playoff games. But, yeah, I wouldn't say any of those teams scare you, especially if Winnipeg is the team that's playing them, which is most likely. I think that they can take on any of those teams in the hunt.
Yeah. If there's a team that makes it and could make some noise, I wonder about Utah, just because their defense is surprisingly really strong when you look at Marino and Dursey back healthy and Sergachev there and the mix they have on the back end. And the mix of fun young forwards that they have, if they finally get in and make some noise, they could be a team that is just playing that loose, fun hockey. But you're right, where we're probably talking about this fun race to get to the second wild card and then play 5 games in the first round.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I will give credit to Vancouver because they've got the spot still, and with what they've
just
been
such
able
a
to
I don't know how
team.
I don't know how they've maintained a playoff
That's
spot
what
for
I
this
mean.
whole
It's like,
storm of a season.
Yeah, this has all happened, and they're actually still in the playoffs. So flowers to them. And if you're looking to see how this Canucks season will unfold in person in the beautiful city of Vancouver, be sure to use Skyscanner to make the most out of your trip and score some great travel deals. Hit the link in our bio for more on that. Now, fellas, I kicked off the show saying, oh, it's March, how exciting. And for the non-hockey, or even for the hockey fans like myself, if there's one thing you know about March, it's March Madness. College basketball, the big dances here. I mean, from Thursday to Sunday of the next 2 weeks are just some of the best time you'll ever spend sitting on the couch all day. That's personally my favorite thing. We had a March Madness show, so shout out to that. I'll plug that in quickly, but I was able to host that. A lot of fun. And I thought, what better way to kind of incorporate that into the NHL than by crafting together our own bracket.
Yes.
So we're going 1 through 32. I've seeded all of these teams based on points percentage, so I tried to make it as even as possible, but we're combining both conferences. We're just throwing all the teams into a hat and seeing
Love
who comes up. And I'm going to have you guys run through this bracket. I'm pumped up about it. So we're going to start on the left side, I'll call it, or the blue conference. John, we're going to have you go through this entire side, and then Kyle will go through the other side. You guys are meet in the middle, and we'll decide on a winner. But kicking things off, the overall number 1 seed is always a highly touted thing when it comes to the basketball tournament. The Winnipeg Jets got that spot, so they should have the easiest path, according to this. Jets, Sharks, no-brainer?
Yeah, and this is a single-game elimination setup, obviously. We're trying to basically replicate what's going on with March Madness in basketball. So that's an interesting wrinkle, though, because obviously hockey, one game, there can be some upsets. But going with Winnipeg here, not going to be too crazy. If we move down to the next matchup, the Rangers and the Blues, I'm going to pick the Blues.
Okay.
I like kind of what's happening there. You know, we talked about earlier with them
down on them.
getting that wild card. I do not trust the Rangers in any sense this season. LA, Boston, I'm going to go with the Kings. Yeah. I think that's pretty non-controversial there. Pittsburgh, Edmonton, that's a tap-in with the Oilers. Vegas, Seattle, I mean, maybe coming into this season you can talk yourself into the Kraken, but I feel like they've disappointed this season, so Golden Knights all day, every day of the week. Columbus, Minnesota, this is an interesting matchup.
I like this one, yeah.
I'm surprised that the Blue Jackets are 21st in the league in points percentage.
It's so close at that middle.
Yeah, so like they could easily be like 16th or whatever.
Underseeded, people might say about the Blue Jackets here.
Yeah, people might be saying that. But I'm going to go with this team that's on such a run and is such a feel-good story. And Elvis Merzlikins is playing well enough to steal a game here. I love that they have game breakers in the Fantillis and Kent Johnsons. And we talked about Voronkov and Marchenko. Zach Werenski is such a dynamic player on the back end. I like them over the Wild.
All right.
And then Utah, Jersey. If Jersey had Jack Hughes and Dougie Hamilton, this is probably a different conversation. But the Utah Yeti or whatever we're going to call them, kind of similar to the Blue Jackets in a sense that like some of their forwards are serious game breakers, from Cooley to Gunther to Keller. Like they've got some real juice.
Yeah.
And I like Vejmelka enough to be okay with their goaltending. And as Kyle mentioned in an earlier segment, that blue line, we haven't seen it at full strength for very long this season, but it currently is.
I like the upset there.
Yes, so there's your upset. Although, Jersey, obviously, it's a bit of smoke and mirrors there with their recent injuries. Buffalo, Carolina, come on. It's
I wonder who we go through here. So going through the first round, we're on to the Sweet 16. I think the picks are fair. Nobody, we don't have a darling here, obviously. Nobody's really going dancing, but I do appreciate your love for the upset here, because it happens every year in the tournament, obviously, the basketball tournament. So to have the Blue Jackets, the Utah pull off a mini upset, I like it a lot. We'll go back to the top of the bracket. We got the 1 seed in the Jets against the 16 seed in the Blues. Are you sticking with the Jets here?
I got to go with the Jets. I just think that they're, borderline powerhouse here, and St. Louis will just they don't have enough juice to go toe to toe with a giant. I think they can take on a New York, but not a Winnipeg.
We've never seen this matchup.
LA Edmonton, right? This is
what a
groundbreaking
treat we have
stuff.
here.
A 1 through 32, and we still get Kings Oilers.
I love
that. Of course.
That.
And I picked the Oilers here. It's mostly it's a Draisaitl McDavid play. I don't love what's going on their blue line or in goal, but very hard to bet against the Oilers,
especially
in a second round of this type of exercise. Yeah. And I like things about the Kings, but I'm okay picking the Oilers over them. Vegas, Blue Jackets. Sorry, Columbus. This is where your time ends. Yeah. Vegas is a well-oiled machine under Bruce Cassidy, and they pull this off. Utah, Carolina. This is my upset.
Whoa! Let's
go. This is the one that really will get the people talking.
The hockey club. This is like a
the hockey clubbers are really dancing here in March Madness.
I love it.
I think it comes down to just sort of the momentum of the season, of being a new franchise, of having nothing to lose. Whereas Carolina, they've done this whole thing this season of acquiring Rantanen, trading him, being 1 foot into going all in, 1 foot out. And I feel like it'll catch up to them here. I think I actually like their goaltending. Vejmelka over Kochetkov. I like Utah's better. Like single elimination. I don't think this is a crazy take, even though Carolina is sort of in that upper echelon day-to-day in the NHL. The Hurricanes, they cannot finish in the playoffs. They usually have some sort of goaltending issue. I think it catches up to them again in this format. And I think Utah, with the with Dylan Gunther pulling the trigger, scores in overtime here to send.
Oh, okay.
Ooh,
Yeah,
OT winner.
I'm going to give you play-by-play
Hey,
at
right
this
in the
point.
Dylan Gunther's had some good overtime
Yes.
winners before.
He
Think of
has.
the World Juniors.
Yes,
there.
yes,
That's
Yes,
sick.
I like it. The Hurricanes, I like what you said too. They're kind of like one of those college teams that's super heavy into the transfer portal. They're
Yes.
swapping guys in and
Yes.
out all year and stuff. They never get that chemistry. Utah just built up their program from the ground, and now they're going dancing into the Elite Eight. We'll have you finish off this bracket here. Jets, Oilers up top, an all-Canadian matchup. Also, what's also important to note, only teams from the West that we have left here in your bracket. So
Oh, good point.
kind
Yeah,
of
I didn't
speaks
even notice that.
to maybe where
Ooh.
these stack up. We'll see what Kyle's side looks like. But Jets, Oilers, who do you go with here?
I'm going with the Oilers.
Okay.
And my rationale, again, goes back to we've got Leon Draisaitl playing the best hockey of his career. He is the Hart Trophy favorite right now, at least in my eyes.
Yeah.
Connor McDavid, who hasn't played to his potential yet this season, but as we all know, I mean, he's the Wayne Gretzky of his generation. He will step up. I think that on paper, they're actually, I wouldn't say they're deep, but they're deep enough. It's just like the sort of chemistry hasn't quite worked out. I think by the time they get to this point in the bracket, they have it figured out. And maybe Hellebuck, flounders again as he has in the past. So
I've seen it happen.
this isn't an easy pick. There's no easy way to do this, but I'm gonna go with the Oilers. And then Vegas. They really mop the floor
Utah's
with
runs
Utah
over here.
And
Cinderella and
the Cinderella story ends, but Utah had a good run there, and the Golden Knights, man, they're just they've got everything going for them in terms of that blue line is just massive, and they insulate their goalie well. Hill is perfectly suited for that system. You've got Jack Eichel having a career year.
Yeah.
You've got them, adding around the edges at the deadline. I'm pretty happy with an Oilers Golden Knights matchup here.
Yes, the stage is set. Final four, and who's your final pick? Is it the Knights or is it the Oilers?
I'm going with the Golden Knights.
Okay, the
Really-
winners of the Blue Conference.
Really like them coming in the season, and they've done nothing to really discourage me from picking them as a team that's going to go deep. And then in this format, I think they just overpower the Oilers.
I like it. The overall 5 seed. So we see the 1 seed go down here, the 4 seed. 5 seed emerges from John's Blue Conference here. Flipping over to Kyle's side of the bracket.
Here we go.
I believe we call it the Red Conference. Top seed in this conference is obviously the Washington Capitals, second in the league. They're down there at the bottom. We'll get to them. But Kyle, kicking things off, we've got Dallas versus Nashville, the 3 versus the 30.
Yeah, let's do this. Dallas, easy pick off the top.
Yeah.
Nashville,
Yeah.
sorry. Moving on, a fun matchup here. Montreal
All Canadian.
and Ottawa. I've got the Senators. They're rolling right into
Yeah.
March Madness.
I like it.
That's a fun team to watch here. Toronto and Detroit. There's always a big upset in round one. The Red Wings go through because a single game elimination with a former Maple Leafs goaltender going up against the Maple Leafs. Peter Mrazek makes 54
my
saves
God.
in a 2-1 win. The Red Wings
love
are
it.
going through. Colorado, easy pick over the Flyers there for
Yeah.
the top half of this side of the bracket. Also, that Red Wings Leafs matchup would be like an equivalent of like a 5-12. That's always a classic.
Yes.
Upset.
You got to have a 5-12 in every
as
single.
well.
12 is going to win. I like it.
Exactly. Okay, we continue on. Panthers over Ducks, another pretty easy one there. The Lightning over the Islanders, a rematch of Eastern Conference Final a couple years ago. The Lightning are moving on there. We talked about it a little bit in the wild card discussion, Vancouver versus Calgary. I've got the Flames moving on. Dustin Wolf, a big game from him.
Nice.
The Canucks are such a weird, strange team this
Okay.
season. I like the Flames moving on in that single game elimination. And then we talked about it, the 2 seed versus the 31, Capitals versus Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Sorry, Connor Bedard. It's the Capitals moving on.
No 16 seeds winning in this
No.
bracket.
Sorry.
I'll say that much. No, honestly, the way that these matchups are shaking out, like where you have the back-to-back Atlantic ones with the Habs and the Sens, the Leafs and the Red Wings, and then you get all Canadian down low with Vancouver, Calgary. Like this actually, I think this worked really well.
Some fun matchups.
Yeah,
here.
I'm excited about this. You never get to see the NHL in this format at all, so
No.
I think this is a fun exercise. for
Closest
us
we
to
got
do.
was that COVID 24 team playoff,
Yeah,
but it
exactly.
wasn't quite this.
Didn't feel the
this way.
same. All right, but going back to the top of the bracket here, we're into the Sweet 16. Dallas versus Ottawa. Who do you go with there?
Big upset, Cinderella story.
Wow.
The Ottawa Senators are through. They've been waiting forever to get back into a playoff scenario. They
Wow,
get it
I
here
like
in
it.
March. They're rolling right now. One of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team in the NHL right now. They roll that into March and take over a Dallas team that the back end is really struggling in terms of the health right now. If we're talking about March right now, without Miro Heiskanen, still only have a few games there of Mikko Rantanen. Linus Ullmark's playing out of his mind as well.
Sens are fun.
Cinderella story. The Senators are through. Great matchup here in terms of the history of Detroit and Colorado, but Colorado are easily through in this matchup. Another great matchup, Florida, Tampa Bay. I hope we see this at some point in the playoffs as well. I've got Tampa Bay going through here. When you look at the Panthers right now, some of the issues that they have in terms of injuries availability, Vasilevsky's having a great season. I like the Lightning to best the Panthers here in this one. And then Washington, Calgary, not a matchup I think a lot of us thought we would be seeing at all. The Capitals go through here. The Flames just can't score. The Capitals are a well-oiled machine offensively this season. When you look at Ovechkin and Protas and all these guys, I've got them going through here in that matchup.
Love it. Yeah, no, I like it. We got a little bit of the Cinderella run staying live with Ottawa, but then, the top-heavy teams are going to win. People are always scared to pick the favorites, and sometimes you just got to do it. They're going to win.
Got to be realistic.
Single game, so anything can
happen. It's true, yeah. It's the best teams for a reason. But all right, let's get into the Elite Eight here. Ottawa versus Colorado, Tampa versus Washington. We actually only have one Western Conference team left here. So
interesting.
That important note that we made before. Yeah, here's where all the East teams are. But how do you have this shaken out?
Well, the Western Conference prevails in this first matchup. The Cinderella story ends for the Senators at this point. Colorado is through. I just love their mix so much, and especially against an Ottawa team that's pretty inexperienced. You don't get much more experience than the Colorado Avalanche. I've got them going through in that matchup. And speaking of experience, Tampa and Washington. Washington has been such a great story all season long, but I still don't really know what to feel about them in these big game matchups. So I've got Tampa going through, representing the Atlantic Division as the 10th overall seed here, going through to a big matchup against Colorado.
Yeah, all right. We got Lightning. We got Avalanche here in the Final Four with a ticket to the finals on the line. Who do you go with?
Well, we're getting an all-West final because I've got the Colorado Avalanche. I love this team so much. I just mentioned it there, and we talked about it earlier with the addition of Brock Nelson. You look at how much they've upgraded the roster in terms of the goaltending, the forward depth, even bringing in a depth defenseman and Eric Johnson back for some of the vibes there.
Yeah.
And Ryan Lindgren on the back end as well. I just really like all the moves that this team has made. And I think we've seen it a little bit already in these past few games. I think in these pressure situations, especially single game, I love a Nathan McKinnon leading the way in some of the mix here. And maybe we get a Gabe Landeskog from the rafters after seeing him practice recently. That would be great to see. But that's a bit far-fetched. I've got Colorado taking things in the red conference.
Nice. All right, so we got Vegas on one side. We got Colorado on the other. I didn't know how to have these guys decide the winners.
I feel like you got to pick.
So I think I'm
neutral arbitrator.
Yes, exactly. And I know, like you guys both raised great points. I mean, it's so fun to see this shake out this way. But
I would love to see this.
The Golden Knights and the Avalanche. You know what? I think I'm gonna go with the hotter team right now. The team we've pumped their tires already this show. I think I'm gonna go with the Avs. I think they're like 8-1-1 in their last 10. This team is like just clicking at the right time.
Little disappointed, but fair argument.
Sorry, I didn't take the blue conference winner there from John. But again, I mean, do we got two Western Conference? Like, I don't know. Maybe the Western Conference really is the conference to beat clearly this year. But what a fun exercise. I'm glad we got to do that.
Yeah, that was fun.
And for the basketball fans out there, make sure you lock into the tournament this year. I'm sure you will. And one thing I think is worthy of noting that we did point out during this exercise is just the art of the one-game series. And honestly, like I don't disagree. Like we had the Oilers in the Final Four, but I mean, if you look at one guy just taking over just a single game, that's all he has to do a couple times throughout this tournament. I feel like the Oilers just are set themselves up in such a good position. And Edmonton's looking to make a deep run again this postseason. I was down there last year for the Cup, one of the best places to watch playoff hockey. So if that's something you're interested in, again, hit the link in our bio for some great deals, courtesy of Skyscanner. Now, shifting gears, we were talking about the Golden Knights there and Aiden Hill, who they just re-signed recently. John, I know you want to get into kind of discussing the goalie market reset because I think it's a super interesting point with a guy like Hill and some of these other guys up here. So, emptying the notebook, let's dig into that.
Yeah, so it feels like forever ago, but say like there was a 2 or 3 year period where it seemed like teams were so hesitant to sign guys, non-star goalies, we'll call it. Like there's like 8 or 10 guys who just consistently get signed to long-term deals for big money. But aside from that, teams were like, okay, we'll give you 1 year here, 2 years here, $5 million here. Like it was very sort of conservative.
Yes.
And a flip switch this season. There's been 6 in-season deals for starters, and these are again non-stars. And they're getting term, they're getting decent money. Aiden Hill has the most term at 6 years, tied with Logan Thompson. He also got that too. Highest AAV is Aiden Hill at 6.25. He just signed last week. So it's just really interesting thing happening here. You got Vejmelka signing in Utah for another long-term deal. Lankin in Vancouver. You wonder about Thatcher Demko and the future of the goaltending in Vancouver. But in general, why is this happening? Why all of a sudden are teams thinking, oh, we actually need to think about our goaltending more on a long-term basis? I think the rising cap has a lot to do with it. I think teams are looking at having a competent goalie signed for 4, 5, 6 years and going, you know what? That's better than us resetting every offseason and trying to find that sort of Band-Aid. And I also think that they look around and go, we don't want to be caught with holding the bag and just looking at the scrap heap and, going, what do we get here? Are we really taking a risk with signing this guy for league minimum for 1 year? Like, is it going to tank our season? I just think teams, I guess, have smartened up or at least gotten comfortable with the risk of signing these guys who can have a bad year and then come back and have a good year, like kind of this inconsistent starter, we'll call it. And I think also there's a factor here of, and it really relates to Aiden Hill, there's system goalies, I think, now where, okay, Aiden Hill bounces around the league, finds himself in Vegas, and guess what? He's perfect for what Bruce Cassidy does in terms of his skaters really insulate the goalie so that Aiden Hill, this massive goalie who's a sort of a blocking goalie versus an athletic one, he just stands there and blocks shots, and it's the goalie system fit is just perfect there. And all of this obviously relates to a weak 2025 UFA class. Guys, I don't know if you've seen the names that are available, but a reason why a lot of these teams have been proactive in signing their guys is because there's not much else there in terms of guys who are about to be a free agent. So Jake Allen is honestly the headliner. He's about to, I believe he's turning 35 in August. You've got guys like Freddie Anderson who cannot stay healthy. You've got like Alex Lyon. Really, like, slim pickings is almost like a compliment to the group. It's really not good. Vanacek, like, just some like very, I'll say mediocre 1B guys, but probably a lot of number 2 guys. Yeah. And all this kind of creates an interesting dynamic where you've got a few desperate teams. So Philadelphia, they have a real problem with their goaltending. If they want to ever take a step forward, they need to address that. Samuel Urson might be fine as your number 2, maybe your 1B guy, but he is not, at least to this point, proven that he can be a starter in the NHL. The 2 Russian goalies they have right now are not it. So I wonder what happens there in Philly. Do they get aggressive on the trade market? Do they sign one of these UFA guys to a deal that they're going to regret? Columbus, Elvis Merzlikins has had a bit of a bounce back season, but still the track record, he's had way more poor seasons than good ones. So you wonder, as they move along in their trajectory, if they want to get a little more serious with contending, do they move on from Merzlikins and try to find a better fit? And then you've got Edmonton. I mean, Stuart Skinner, he's fine. We probably over-criticize him if we're being honest, but still, if they really want to maximize Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl's prime, maybe there's a fit somewhere else. And the fit, maybe it's a trade, because you've got John Gibson. He's going to have 2 years left on his deal after the season. So we've been waiting for his deal to seem palatable for other teams. But he's only 31. It seems like we talk about him like he's like 37.
That's crazy. Yeah. He feels so much older.
He's been doing it for a while.
$6.4 million as of next year. That's not going to be a ton with the cap going up, right? So I wonder if this offseason is finally the year that he moves. You look at a guy like Jordan Binnington. He has, I believe, 1 more year left going into next season, maybe 2. But Joel Hofer is kind of the goalie of the future in St. Louis. Yeah. So does Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen, the brain trust there in St. Louis, go, hey, let's move off Binnington while we can? His obviously name value is through the roof. His stock is through the roof after the 4 Nations. So can we sort of retool here? with our skater group by moving Binnington out. And then you've got, a guy like UC Saros, who I wonder about, where, yes, he signed to a long-term deal in Nashville, but things have gone so south in Nashville that I wonder if in the offseason things are kind of like, it's like almost like no things off the table.
No,
obviously, there'd be a huge market for a guy like Saros. And then I mentioned Demko when I talked to Lankin in there. Obviously, a lot of injury problems there, but he seems like an obvious sort of change of scenery guy. And if, again, there's a desperate team out there, do they take a chance on a guy who's a little broken and just go, at least this is better than the alternative? So just a lot of really interesting things going on in the goalie market. And a lot of the stars are signed long-term. There's not like some big-ticket guy who's about to come up this summer where you're going, oh, how's this going to turn out? Is he going to make $10 million? Is he going to sign for 8 years? It's a lot of sort of middle-of-the-pack, 25th best starter in the league kind of stuff. But there could be some movement because – like a lot of these teams have taken care of business, but there's some that are going like we can't possibly come back with what we have right now. So storylines to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no, it's such a unique kind of environment that we're dealing with right now. I always compare trading goalies around like quarterbacks getting traded around, just because you only have one guy playing the position on your team. And I think just the idea of actually having them kind of get plugged and played in different places is riveting to me. And I think we saw it a little bit further back, and as of late, it kind of died down. But I think, honestly, like I like the points you're making about the Oilers. Those feel like win-wins to me, because you get a guy like a Jordan Binnington where the Blues are maybe even like, okay, it's time to move off this guy. Like, he might be able to kind of see what's coming here. But he can go to Edmonton and just give them better goaltending than really that they've gotten. And so I don't think the bar is too high for a guy like him or a guy like John Gibson. So I think that's something very interesting to note. Great stuff.
What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, it's something where I'm fascinated to see what the Blues do with Binnington, because as you mentioned, Hofer's the guy of the future. And it's like, are you going to re-sign Binnington when his contract's up in a couple of years? Probably not, because Hofer's going to be there. So why not cash in on his value and see if you can upgrade the roster in other positions? That's a fascinating one to see this summer. And then, you mentioned John Gibson, and it's like we've been talking about trading him for what feels like a decade. Lucas Dostal is clearly the number one now at this point, so it's not a situation where Gibson's still playing this huge workload and they're reliant on him. They can afford to keep him because they're not worried about the salary cap, just given the current salary structure and team. But I think for everybody involved, it's time to move off of that and find a trade partner for him this summer. So I hope we see, at the very least, a John Gibson trade this summer, because everyone's been waiting to see Gibson in a good environment on a good team again, because so many people still believe in that raw talent. And I hope he gets the opportunity to prove people right that have believed in him and prove people wrong that have been disparaging him for a few years now.
Yeah, and who knows, like maybe these teams that are very desperate for goalies, like you get a team like Anaheim or St. Louis, maybe you will start to see teams just become goalie factories. And like the value of the goalie goes up. All of a sudden, you've got like 4 great ones. Why don't you trade them away for some good players? Something to think about, NHL teams. Maybe start pumping out goalies a little bit more. But shifting gears here to something that I'm excited to talk about with you, Kyle, with the Women's World Champion coming up. We have a very, very, very fun story. I don't want to spoil it too much. I want to let you kind of take it away. But a very curious case, I think, that we have on our hands here. What do you have on us?
Yeah, certainly. So Hannah Miller has been one of the breakout stars of the PWHL season, where she's been one of the top scorers, leading the Scepters in scoring this season. 23 points in 22 games. She's been exceptional this year. A 13th round pick in the inaugural PWHL draft. Just somebody that nobody really expected to be a star player that has become a star player. She was born in British Columbia, but she's represented China most recently at the IIHF level, and she's looking to switch back to play for Canada. I spoke with Troy Ryan, Team Canada and Scepter's head coach, recently, and he confirmed that Miller submitted a proposal, a request to the IIHF to switch back from China to play for Canada. And the timeline on that is uncertain. It's unclear if Miller would be approved, if she is approved, to play as soon as the World Championships coming up in April. But it's a fascinating case, because when we talk about players switching which countries they play for in hockey, I don't think we've ever talked about a case where somebody eligible to play for China right now is switching to play for Canada. But that's exactly what we're talking about right now, where Hannah Miller, when she was younger at the U18 level, played for Canada at the U18s in 13 and 14, actually played with her current teammate Sarah Nurse at those tournaments. Played college hockey at St. Lawrence, didn't look like a player that was really going to be on the Team Canada radar going forward. So she ends up going to China, plays 5 years there at the time with the Kunlun Red Star team that was in the CWHL, basically a program that was made in partnership with the CWHL at the time to make the Chinese team better in lead up to the 2022 Olympics. And so Miller ends up playing at the 2022 game. She plays at the 2022 World Championships, a lower level tournament for Team China, but she hasn't played for China since then. And since the 2022 games, China's also changed some of their rules about player selection, where foreign-born players that are dual nationals, players like that, like Hannah Miller, are no longer under consideration for the national team, where it is only players that are born in China, that are Chinese citizens, that are being selected now. So even if Miller wanted to continue playing for China, which it seemed like at least a year or two ago she had that interest, she's not eligible to be selected anymore. China won't select her. So it's not even a case where she's looking to switch away from a team that needs her to play for Team Canada again. That's not the case here. If she's not playing for Team Canada, she's not going to be playing international hockey at all. So it's a fascinating case here for the IIHF, where they have the rule where it's you have one switch, and she switched from Canada to play for China. But now, not being under consideration for China, will the IIHF allow her to switch back to Canada? Troy Ryan seemed pretty optimistic about her chances to do so. But this is a really fascinating case here for a player in their prime, 29 years old, one of the top 5 scorers in the PWHL this season, a great 5-on-5 scorer, has been productive on the Scepters power play. And when you talk to people around the Scepters, obviously you kind of lead into the conversation talking about her shot and her offensive ability, but everybody around the team always talks about her defensive acumen as well, which makes her a really intriguing, versatile bottom 6 potential piece for Team Canada as soon as the April World Championship this year. But I think more importantly, honestly, looking ahead to a mini centralization this summer leading into the Olympics in 2026 is an option for that. But a fascinating case here for Hannah Miller, and I think we'll probably see at least the first step of this story in the next couple of weeks whenever Canada finally announces their roster.
Yeah, this is super interesting for a few matters or layers. Like, obviously she's a late bloomer. That's cool to see. 2, you mentioned it there in passing. Like, usually in men's hockey, it's like the Canadian, fourth liner gets Italian citizenship. Well, like, he's at the Olympics for Italy.
Jake Chelios played for China at the 2022 Olympics. Things like that.
But this is the other way around, where the minnow is like giving up on this player, and they're going back to the powerhouse. It's really interesting in that respect. And just in terms of the IIHF, like, they're in a bit of a tricky spot where it's like you're going to create a precedent, right? Like, as much as it makes sense to, like, say, okay, go back to Canada, well, what if someone does something similar in the future, but it's a little more, like, sketchy or a little more, like, behind the scenes pulling strings versus this one seems innocent? Like, so the IIHF certainly has to, like, wade the waters appropriately.
It's very much not a black and white case here, where you might think on paper, oh, she's a Canadian-born player, born and raised in BC, played for Canada at a lower level, and China won't select her anymore. It's an easy pick. And in my mind, I think it ends up happening because I think it's ultimately the right thing to allow the player the opportunity to play. But I don't, as you mentioned there, it does create a certain precedent where I doubt this is a scenario we see often by any means, but a player at 22, 23, 24 years old might look at their opportunity to play for Canada or USA or whoever and think that they're probably not likely to play for those national teams, look to play somewhere else, and look down the road. Like, we look at Italy for 2026, some of the options there. There have been players that have gone from Canada to play in Italy who have Italian heritage to be eligible to play in 2026. Kristen Della Rovere, who played for PWHL Ottawa last season, she's playing in Italy in order to go and play for the Italian national team. Laura Fortino, who played at multiple Olympics for Canada, is leading the charge in terms of somebody with Italian heritage that is playing in Italy to play for the Italian national team. So it's not impossible that these scenarios can happen in the future, but it is pretty unlikely, which is why I think ultimately they do allow the switch for Miller to be eligible to play for Canada, which I think would be the right thing for everybody involved.
Yeah, I'm interested to see too, because I think this sets the precedent for this kinds of cases in hockey, but other sports too. Like, you look at the past Summer Olympics this year, and you see Joel Embiid. He's got 3 citizenships. He's got Cameroon, he's got USA, he's got France. And he bounced from Cameroon to France thinking, oh, this would be a fun. And then now he's like, oh, wait, I can play for the States. He's all over the place. And so not to say that
I think that's a little
thing.
Goofy to be like bouncing around.
And that's why these rules are in place to prevent people from bouncing around. And we talk most about these citizenship stuff with like FIFA and with FIBA and some things like that. Yeah. It's not really something that comes up too much in hockey. We did talk about it a little bit with Joey Decourt and whether he could get that Canadian passport. Maybe it's something with international hockey becoming at the forefront again. Obviously, we're talking about a women's hockey example here where it's been pretty common, but maybe it's something that comes to the forefront in hockey here in the next few years.
Oh, yeah. Very fun stuff. Very, very intriguing case that we have there. Wrapping up the show, though, we are on to the last segment here. Our favorite segment, it's Top Shelf Trivia.
All right.
John won it last week, so John, would you like your
Finally
chance?
back. Sure, let's do this. It's been a while. It's been literally months.
Yeah, it has been a while. We had to get Aiden off of here. He was on a bit of a hot stretch, but it's nice to see John in the chain already. And just a quick leaderboard update. Kyle in the lead, as per usual.
I got some franchise help from John.
Yes.
We got to mention that as well.
Franchise. The
franchise.
Is always mentioned.
But no, I have an exciting one. A guy that we haven't talked about. It did happen like almost a full week ago now, right after we did the last show. But Nathan MacKinnon hit 1,000 points. 100th player to hit 1,000 points. So it was a bit of a big deal. McDavid did it earlier this season. He was 99. Nathan MacKinnon was 1,000. And something about Nathan MacKinnon is I don't think anyone was ever out on him, but he started off a little bit slow to the point where I think people looked at that draft class and thought, should the Avs have gone with someone else? Obviously, in hindsight now, it was one of the best picks ever.
Speaking of sophomores, he had a huge sophomore.
Exactly. So I wanted to do a fun style trivia with you guys that I've done before in the past, not on this show, but it's one of my favorites. I just call it a good old-fashioned draft trivia. I have the 9 teams that selected after Colorado in that 2013 draft. Can you guys tell me the 9 players that got drafted?
Kyle's gonna smoke me in this.
I don't know. We'll see.
Sorry, what? Do you have the year handy?
2013.
Yeah,
2013. It was after Nathan MacKinnon, so it's all the way from 2 till 10. There's 9 players we're looking for here. Somebody's gonna end up with 5 and win this thing. But can you tell me the top 10 players drafted from the 2013 draft? John thinks Kyle has the leg up, so why don't we start?
Yeah,
with you?
John starts at 2.
I'm pretty sure that's Barkov at 2.
That is Alexander Barkov at 2. Very nicely done. 1 for John. Over to Kyle.
Halifax Mooseheads teammate of MacKinnon,
Yes.
Jonathan Drouin.
Nice.
That is correct. Jonathan Drouin went 3 here. Oh, he was so fun to watch on Halifax. Anyways,
Those two were so sick.
Getting carried away thinking of Jonathan Drouin, Mooseheads highlights. But back to you, John.
Do we have to go in order?
You don't have to go in order. No. Anybody on this board here?
I think Calgary is. No. I'll just go with it because. Yeah, is it Dylan Dubé?
Calgary is not Dylan Dubé. I think you're a little bit. He was a little bit later than 2013. Yeah. Back to Kyle.
Number 4, Seth Jones.
Seth Jones is correct. Did go 4th in that class. So Kyle's just banging them out one by one. John's trying to take a different approach. We've got 5 through 10 now. Where do you go?
5, Noah Hannafin.
Noah Hannafin, I believe, is incorrect. Sorry.
Oh, he was in
Hannafin was
the
later.
Next year?
He was the, he would have been 15 draft.
But
he was the
Did he
Marner
not go
year.
5th, too?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right
That's
there.
a tough
but
one.
That is a tough one. All right, back to Kyle.
I believe 5 is Elias Lindholm.
Oh,
5 is Elias Lindholm.
That's a good one.
The Carolina Hurricanes. Very nicely done. This is shaping up for a Kyle win. Let's see if John can pull anything together here. We've got the last 5 picks now.
I feel like we're getting into some sketchy territory in terms of guys not standing out. Oh, man.
We've got Calgary, Edmonton, Buffalo, Vancouver, and Dallas.
Calgary will go Rasmus Anderson, even though it doesn't feel right.
Calgary is not Rasmus Anderson.
Oh.
Didn't feel right for a reason.
Yeah.
Back
He's
to you,
way
Kyle.
younger than that.
6 Calgary Flames, Sean Monahan.
Sean Monahan.
God,
that is correct. 6th overall. All right. Is that 4-1 for Kyle? One more and he wins.
We're starting to get into sketchy territory.
Yeah.
I felt good about the first part.
I'll tell you guys this now because you both just had guesses. This, out of all the drafts I probably could have picked here, this is the one with the most name.
Yeah.
Like, all of these guys are still playing. Everyone in this top 10. Which is pretty cool to see. It's been 12 years after this draft now.
Man. I should know Buffalo because they've had... Oh, I'm going to go with Brandon Montour, but I don't feel great about it.
Brandon Montour is incorrect. Back to you, Kyle.
7 Oilers, Darnell Nurse.
That's correct. That is correct. Darnell Nurse. That's
I knew
5-1
you were
Kyle
gonna
for the
crush
win. Do you guys want to take any more?
I'm running.
This is in the wheelhouse.
I'm drawing blank, so you can finish.
We'll let Kyle clean us up here.
Buffalo, I don't remember, so I'm going to loop back to that. 9, Bo Horvat.
Correct. Dallas at 10.
Is that Valerie Nichushkin?
That's Valerie Nichushkin. Very nicely done. One more, Buffalo. Like I said, he's still playing.
Can you get the position?
Defenseman.
So, it's not Nikita Zadorov. Rasmus Ristolainen.
Rasmus Ristolainen.
Alrighty, there we go.
Very nicely done. Very nicely done. Wow.
That's a really good top 10, like in terms of guys who are sticking around.
Incredible. I mean, you look at some of these other ones even more recently than this, and you'll have like a guy going 5th overall who's not even playing.
Yeah, Michael Dalcol.
That's the one that came to mind right away.
Yeah.
So, no, I was impressed to see.
And some fascinating career paths when you think about Valerie Nichushkin and like Jonathan Drouin and even Seth Jones at this point. Like, there's some fascinating players in this.
Far and away though, like considering how good, I don't think it was ever a question Nathan MacKinnon's not going one in this draft, but considering how good it was, it's nice to see that like they will never go to bed like thinking, oh no, look at all like Barkov went after and stuff like that.
Seth Jones was there was a lot
people
of buzz
talked
on
about him, yeah.
And, you know what,
and then he dropped to 4th, right? Like it's always that weird thing where it's
Yeah.
like, did he really drop, or is it just like a smoke screen from one team? Saying,
Yeah.
"I'm
The
not gonna
crazy
take
stat is that Jonathan Drouin had the more productive draft year than Nathan MacKinnon.
On that Avalanche team, we praised them a lot this show. They won our March Madness bracket, so we'll see if that translates into winning a Stanley Cup. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. It's been Top Shelf presented by Skyscanner. For John Matisz, Kyle Cushman, I'm Levi Smith. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.